Welcome in, students. Today we are taking a deep dive into Exodus chapter 15. Now, to really grasp this, we need to picture the scene. We are catching Israel at this truly monumental turning point. The Red Sea has literally just closed over Pharaoh's army. The chariots, they lie completely quiet at the bottom of the sea. And a nation that just hours ago was crying out in absolute terror is now raising its voice in a massive, triumphant song of praise. In this explainer, we're going to explore Israel's immense transition, moving from this miraculous deliverance straight into immediate and, frankly, very harsh testing out in the wilderness. It's a profound text. Actually, this chapter is a brilliant masterclass in how a newly redeemed people have to learn to walk with their king.
To make sure we're pulling every ounce of truth from this passage, we'll be sticking strictly to a literal, grammatical, historical framework. Here is our roadmap. First, we'll look at the historical and cultural background. Then we'll walk through the biblical narrative itself. After that, we'll unpack the theological significance, look at some crucial spiritual lessons and applications, and finally, wrap it all up with our conclusion. Let's jump right in.
Let us examine the historical and cultural background, the context of the divine warrior.
Now, to fully understand Exodus 15, we absolutely have to read the text dispensationally. Think about where Israel is right now. For centuries, God has been dealing with them strictly under the dispensation of promise, the era of the patriarchs. But right now, they are right in the middle of a massive physical and spiritual transition. They are physically walking through the desert, having just left Egypt, and they are standing right at the precipice of the dispensation of the law, which will be given at Mount Sinai. So the song we're about to read, it's really the new creed of a people who are breathing free air for the very first time.
In this transitional moment, Moses and the Israelites use a very familiar ancient Near Eastern motif, the divine warrior. You see, ancient kings were always carving their military victories into stone monuments to prove their might. But here, the text insists on the Lord's absolute, undeniable uniqueness. God isn't just another warrior. I mean, think about it. No other God can pile up the massive waters of the sea simply by the blast of his nostrils. By splitting the sea, God wasn't just saving his people, though he certainly did that. He was publicly, decisively dethroning the impostor gods of Egypt and establishing his absolute mastery over chaos.
Let us examine the biblical narrative, a verse-by-verse journey.
Israel's very first steps of freedom turn instantly into a massive corporate confession of worship. Verse 1 says, "I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea." You know, it's fascinating. Worship becomes the very first language of their freedom. Before they build a nation, before they receive the law, they sing. They are boldly naming God as their strength, their song, and their ultimate salvation.
And the imagery here brilliantly captures the sheer, overwhelming power of that deliverance. Verse 8 says, "By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea." Just picture the physics of that for a second. God's majestic holiness and his righteous anger perfectly unite here. With a single divine breath, the very molecular structure of the ocean is altered. He creates a dry, safe path for Israel on one hand, and a sudden, devastating watery grave for the proud Egyptian army on the other. But the song doesn't just look backward at what happened. It pivots beautifully to the path ahead. Verse 13 declares, "In your unfailing love you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling." This right here is an absolutely crucial point. God's love and God's strength, they always travel together. This definitively answers the ancient lie that God either cares but lacks the power to act, or he has the power but simply doesn't care. No, he possesses both perfectly, and he uses both perfectly to guide his people home.
But as we so often see in the biblical narrative, the music quickly yields to the grueling reality of travel and testing. Moses leads the people out into the desert of Shur, and astoundingly, it only takes 3 days, 3 days without water, for miraculously delivered people to start grumbling at the bitter waters of Marah. Honestly, it's a sobering look at human nature. But look at God's grace in response. He provides a specific piece of wood, a divine instrument, to turn that bitter water sweet. And eventually, he leads them right into Elim, which is this beautiful, lush picture of rest, shade, and sweet provision right in the middle of a dry, unforgiving land.
Let us examine the theological significance, systematic, and dispensational insights.
Let's break this chapter down systematically because it is incredibly rich. First, we have soteriology, the doctrine of salvation. The Red Sea rescue proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that deliverance requires total divine power. Israel contributed absolutely nothing to their own rescue. And notice this,
Their salvation wasn't fully realized until it was sung and confessed. Then, we look at hamartiology, the doctrine of sin. Look back at Marah. We see the rapid, tragic decay of human gratitude mutating straight into the sin of grumbling, just 72 hours after their miraculous rescue. And finally, we see stunning Christology. God reveals himself there as Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals you. This is a direct, brilliant foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, our great physician, who gracefully binds our obedience to our ultimate spiritual well-being.
Now, if we apply our prophetic framework to verses 13 through 17, it demands that we recognize a dual fulfillment here. It's kind of like looking at two mountain peaks, one right behind the other. Historically, the first peak is Joshua's literal, physical conquest of the land of Canaan and the eventual establishment of the earthly sanctuary in Jerusalem. But prophetically, looking at that farther peak, the song concludes with this massive statement, "The Lord reigns forever and ever." That points us directly to the future millennial kingdom, where Jesus Christ himself will reign upon the earth.
And as careful students of the Word, we have to maintain a strict theological distinction here between God's specific program for national Israel and his program for the New Testament church. Israel's deliverance was a literal, physical rescue out of the geography of Egypt, and it was tied to literal, physical promises of land and health. In sharp contrast, the church's deliverance is a spiritual rescue from the penalty of sin, tied to spiritual inheritance and eternal life. We must be very careful never to blur these dispensational lines.
Let us examine the spiritual lessons and application the rhythm of faith.
You see, this chapter teaches us a very specific chronological rhythm of faith, which we can break down into 3 distinct steps. Step 1, you have to have a song for deliverance. When God rescues you, you need to sing your theology aloud so that it anchors you when the fear inevitably returns. Step 2, you must exercise trust in the desert. Because listen, after every triumph comes a test. When the circumstances of your life turn bitter, just like the waters of Marah, that is the exact moment you are called to trust. And step 3, obedience to the healer. We must joyfully obey his commands, taking his past victories and using them as the very seeds for our next act of obedience.
So here is a direct pastoral warning for us today. We must actively resist grumbling by constantly rehearsing what God has already done. Think about Israel. The sore throat of thirst drowned out yesterday's magnificent praise in just 3 days. Grumbling does something terrible. It literally shrinks the God of the universe down to the size of your latest problem. So I strongly urge you today to enlarge your gratitude. Make it so big that your present trials fit securely and safely under the massive canopy of God's past faithfulness to you.
Let us examine the conclusion, worshipers and learners.
Let's read these magnificent words from the text one more time. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. My friends, this is the permanent, unshakable declaration of God's unmatched holiness. It is the absolute, ironclad guarantee of his sovereign, unfailing love for his redeemed people. Make no mistake, no idol can compare to him, and absolutely no trial can thwart his sovereign plan to bring you safely to his holy dwelling.
So may the Lord grant you the grace to sing his praises boldly on the shores of victory. May he give you the steadfast faith to trust him when the waters of your life run better. And may he grant you the joyful obedience to follow the great healer all the days of your life. As you look out at the landscape of your own life today, I want to leave you with this provocative question. Are you letting a present trial shrink your view of God, or are you singing your theology aloud right there in the desert? Keep singing his truth on the road. For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woodybrom.online.